Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the CineFix Top 100, the neon-soaked and destroyed future that we're stuck with until we watch 100 of the greatest movies of all time. I'm Clint Gage, and joining me, as always, Lieutenant Madam Chief Alex Stedman.
Thank you. Good title. Good title. I'm doing good.
Was it Lieutenant or was it Madam?
I think it was Madam. It was Madam.
Madame.
Yeah,
we can
Madame.
get there later. I'm giving too much away. But also joining us, of course, within Cells Interlinked, Michael Calabro. Cal, what's happening?
How's it going, dude?
It's going.
Hell yeah.
We're back. Season 3.
We did it.
We did it. We hiatused.
We're still going.
We hiatused and we survived. Look at that. You know, as opposed to Season 2, which was all about community. Once again, Dan's algorithm has sprouted an unfortunate amount of sentience. And he's got another theme for us this week. And I'm apparently assigning a gender to Dan's algorithm at this point.
We're trying to retire it.
You're trying to retire it, yeah. But Season 3, the theme is Alone Against the World.
That's very specific.
Right?
Yeah.
So this season is all about, it's movies that are about loners, about people with the odds stacked against them, about individuals that are having to fight against entire systems, alone against the world. Outsiders, I suppose, would be
the
another.
opposite of our last season.
I know.
Yeah.
We're ping-ponging right across the whole spectrum. I guess next Season 4 might end up being like, pretty all right dudes.
People
right
with
in the
one
middle.
or two friends.
People with an appropriate group of friends. Yeah. That'll be Season 4.
Alone against the world.
Alone against the world.
Trying to think of like what movies could fit.
We'll see what.
We'll figure it out. I'm sure there's more than a couple.
There's
This
a
is
handful.
a good one. This
isn't the only movie against the world.
We will see what Dan's algorithm has in store for us for the rest of this season. But for now, we are starting off with a good one, I think. Blade Runner 2049.
There. Bleeding.
He is alone against the world.
He's
That's
quite
fair.
alone.
Killing his own kind.
No, his kind doesn't run. So Blade Runner 2049, of course, the long-awaited sequel, long in the works sequel. It's debatable about how awaited it was, to 1982's Blade Runner. This one's directed by Denis Villeneuve, starring Ryan Gosling, Harrison Ford, Robin Wright, Ana de Armas, Jared Leto, a whole bunch of people. Real good cast. Of course, David Desmalkian's there. It's a Denis Villeneuve film. So
Edward James almost makes a return.
Edward James almost shows
How
back
it's nice
up.
to see Admiral Adama in something.
Mm-hmm. And a replicant of Sean Young shows up too in a really
Yeah.
really on the nose, not terribly subtle sort of bit of meta narrative. The other bit of the pedigree for this film, nominated for 5 Academy Awards, nominated for production design, sound editing, sound mixing. It won for best cinematography for Roger.
As it should.
Roger
Yeah.
Deakins.
Yeah.
Which we were talking about this for as many times through the first 2 seasons that we talked about John Williams or Steven Spielberg. Or there's a handful of guys that have popped back up. This is the first Deakins that we've gotten to talk about.
It won't be the last.
It won't be
I
the
can't
last,
imagine
yeah.
it will be. Yeah.
This isn't even the highest rated Deakins on my list.
Well, there you go. Okay.
You're just one of
Well, he
those.
won an Academy Award for it, and the VFX team also won the Academy Award, which I think is incredibly
Both deserved,
well
yeah.
earned. Yeah.
Have you guys watched those featurettes on them building the miniatures? We'll talk about them in
Yeah.
a bit, but oh my God.
One of the good things about insisting on making sequels to super old movies is there's that want to sort of make them in the way that they used to make them. So the way that they incorporated miniatures into the production of 2049 is I think really cool. I'm glad they did it. But the other thing about this movie, it's kind of shocking that it got made to begin with.
Incredible. I mean, I don't know how much you guys know about Blade Runner, but I'm utterly fascinated by 2 things. First, let me say, I got a couple of grenades I want to throw. I'm going to start throwing one right now.
Uh-oh.
I think that this is the better Blade Runner.
I don't
Okay.
think that's that hot of a take, to be honest.
I think it's controversial. I don't think it's universally accepted.
You can. There are people who will fight you on it. Yeah.
I mean, there'll be people that literally will fight me about anything in these comments.
They're coming at you already. I can feel it.
Yeah, I can already feel it. But I do think that this is the better Blade Runner. And one of the things that it fascinates me about it is how anybody thought that this movie was going to make money.
That's what I say too. I said the same. Who thought?
They were absolutely wrong or right if they assumed it wasn't going to make money. It didn't.
We finished last season off on Boogie Nights, and all I keep on thinking about is the Philip Baker Hall scene, and he just sits down and he's just videos the way, and it's just they did all of the practical effects. I think this movie cost $150 million, and I want to know who thought that they were going to get $300 million at the box office out of this thing, right? Because like even the first Blade Runner, huge dud. And the only reason it is a classic today is because in the early 90s, late 80s, they were doing like a revival showing of it. And Warner Brothers accidentally sent the wrong version of the film.
They sent the original. They sent Ridley Scott's print without any of the VO and all of that stuff.
But they thought they were like, wow, they're really getting artsy with this. Like,
I mean, that had to have been just some dude's assistant, like just carried the wrong can of film over to the theater.
And it's just like, what just happened? I think it was, by the way, it was Warner Brothers that did this, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
because
The original?
yeah, because part of what wasn't in that print that they showed was all the reused footage that Warner Brothers had from The Shining that shows up at the end of Blade Runner. All of the helicopter shots through the green countryside that's at the end of Blade Runner, that was actually footage that Kubrick didn't use for The Shining.
This movie became a classic by accident.
Yeah.
Right? Or it's prequel, or like the first one. Like like the original Blade Runner became a classic by like some like archivist's accident.
Yeah.
You know?
And like, rightfully so, because like the theatrical version, that it should not have made money. Like it was,
and it
yeah,
did.
the version that they accidentally showed to a bunch of people at a theater in West Hollywood or wherever they were playing, it was like that was the good one, and that's the one that's better, and that's one of the 14 or 15 versions of Blade Runner. I don't know if we're gonna get to Blade Runner on this show or not.
Yeah,
we might end up doing a double episode. But
this does seem to be the Blade Runner.
I think we're
episode.
going to accidentally do a double episode.
I guess like what I'm trying to say is like that work print was so well received that studio allowed Ridley to finish it off, and then you get like the the director's cut, and then I think there's a final cut.
There's like
that.
4
There's
versions
like
of Blade
another
Runner.
cut.
Yeah.
They just
Either
kept
way,
making cuts.
The definition of like a cult classic film, and then 25 years after that, someone's like, here's another $150 million. Go make a sequel.
Go lose us money, Denis.
Yeah, I mean, in the fact that it took the same route, like it lost money, like it was 150, 170, something like that $1 million budget, and it made 200 something worldwide. It needed to make 500 or 600 or something like that, and it just didn't come close.
No, not even close. But it's so aggressively uncommercial too. It's so long. It moves really slowly. It's one of those movies where, to its credit, financially,
it's doing a lot.
It's doing a lot, and most like viewers who are not cinephiles don't like. They would rather go see a 90-minute Super Mario Brothers movie. But like,
I mean, everybody that likes it loves it.
Yeah.
But there's just so few people, so few of them, that they can't make enough money.
But it was like it was critically acclaimed.
It is good. It looks and sounds incredible.
You look lonely. I can fix that.
And watching it again, this is my biggest takeaway is, I think you said it just now, it's like there's too much happening in this movie. Like I'd forgotten how many threads are at play in this movie.
Now I'm going to get in trouble because I'm going to talk about how I respect this movie more than I actually like it.
That attitude is welcome here.
Okay, fair enough. But no, like
it's a sober enough take. It was like, I respect your take more than I like it. How about that?
Yeah. No, but I did see it when it came out, but I haven't rewatched it. And rewatching it for this, I told myself I was going to watch it in 2 parts, which I don't usually consume movies that way. I usually just sit down and do it. It took me 3 gosh darn sessions to get through this. Like 3 nights of just like, all right, got to get back to Blade Runner 2049. And I struggled a bit through it.
I started watching it the other night and fell asleep, not because it was boring, but because this is not a movie that will keep you awake.
I don't think it's
I don't think it's a movie.
to.
I don't think it's a movie that will put you to sleep, but it is a movie that will not keep you awake.
Well, there are times where it's like hypnotic in a way that I'm like, am I supposed to take a nap?
Well, I do love the score of the original, and I do love that this one is sort of Vangelis like adjacent, like that synthy kind of. But then there's also
I just like the slow.
There's also the Villeneuve's favorite thing to do which is just like that like massive sort of movement sounds that sort of score, but maybe it's the spaceship that makes that sound, but it's also probably the score. Like there's a lot of what he's good at in this movie for sure, and it's but
is Is it his best movie?
No.
It's not my favorite of his.
Yeah.
No, I'm an Arrival boy, but I have such a soft spot for Arrival. I think Arrival and Sicario, I think, are unimpeachable. I think Dune I really enjoyed.
I like this. I think more than I like Dune.
Yeah.
I think Arrival is the only Villeneuve movie that I'm like actually pretty like passionate about.
Yeah.
Everything else I respect, but I don't love.
He's an incredible craftsman. He really
again,
is.
I'm so glad he's able to do what, and I think he's the only blockbuster filmmaker out there doing what he's doing.
I will say though, so my soft spot for Arrival is because I saw it when my daughter, and I know I've told you guys this story, but I saw it when my daughter was like 3, and I saw it at a press screening on the Paramount lot, I think is where it was. And I was just like those, and press screenings, like they're usually pretty dry, pretty sober, everybody's just kind of in there doing their work. And, it's kind of, they're always bad places to watch comedies.
Or watch anything that has an emotion in it.
I was watching Arrival in a room full of press and colleagues and everything. Just like I was blubbering.
It's his most
I was
emotional
ugly
movie.
crying by the end of it. Like that movie hit me at exactly the right time. But I do think that, and I feel like this is probably going to be where a lot of our conversation ends up going. But one of the interesting things about talking about Blade Runner 2049 is we do this series, My Best Shots. And one of our colleagues in the UK does it for us. And he always does a great job. But we've had both Denis Villeneuve and Ridley Scott do it. And Denis Villeneuve's favorite shot from Blade Runner 2049 is a close-up on Ryan Gosling's hand when he's towards the beginning when he's flying.
Wakes up on his way
and he wakes up on his way to go get Dave Bautista. He's like, I just love that shot because it's like it humanizes him. Like here we're looking at his hand in the foreground.
You're looking at a robot
sleeping, and we're humanizing him, and it's just like he there's something about hands to him that are sort of more human, I guess, than other parts.
Interesting.
So, yeah, but it's that tiny in this movie, this expansive movie. That's the shot that he flagged. Ridley Scott, when he was asked about what his favorite shot from Blade Runner was, he's like, the opening, that big ass thing that Doug Trumbull did. I just
like
that
the most obvious answer.
Yeah, it is like this massive, wide shot, and which to be fair, it is incredible because it was like something like a 17 passes on the same negative.
Oh yeah.
To get all of the miniatures and the models and all the effects in, because there was nothing digital in 1981, I guess, when they were making it. But that to me is the difference between these two movies. And frankly, where I give Villeneuve lots and lots of credit, because there is always a little bit of pathos to everything that he's doing. Like even if it's very oblique, and even if it's incredibly subtle, and even if it's the opposite, even if it's super loud and somebody's, it's Hugh Jackman screaming and beating the shit out of Paul Dano. Like there's like humanity in all of this stuff.
And that's why, again, I really respect the hell out of it. And it's not just the characterization, it's the world building. So like, I think that same scene with the hand, the thing that he's writing on, it's not paper, because we learn that paper is super expensive.
Yeah.
It's like plastic
Trees
that he's
are
writing on. Trees are dead. Yeah. And I do feel like even though they don't tell you everything they're feeling, these characters are super in depth.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the hand. I got to go back and watch that video.
I like it. It's a really smart move on his part too, to just because. And by the way, when we refer to these things when we refer to replicants as robots, we understand that they are bio-orgasms.
We're gonna accidentally use robot, replicant, cyborg, and
we might as well just call them toasters, like in
skin jobs.
Yeah,
Skin
like in Battlestar.
Yeah. We're apologies in advance for using some of those interchangeably.
You made a point earlier about you don't particularly enjoy watching this, right? But you respect it.
Yeah.
So the book that he has on his, like one of them, I remember watching this movie in 2017 and having my mind absolutely blown, right? So when he goes back to his apartment for that one scene, right? And he's talking to his Alexa,
Joy,
Anna de Armas, right? And like he has a book on his coffee table that is Pale Fire by Vladimir Nabokov. And that was the last book I ever wrote a paper on at college. So like it has a soft spot in my heart. Now that book is literally the textbook definition of a book that is a painful fucking read, but it sticks with you the entire time. And what's utterly fascinating about that book is it's to really distill it down, it's a fake poet dies, right? Like everything's fictional, right? So a poet dies, he has the poet gets murdered, he has one last poem left, and this guy that was like a grad student, like somehow connected to him, right? Takes it upon himself to write all of the literary criticism of this dead poet's last poem. And like, as you start reading this criticism, it just gets kind of like more absurd and more absurd. And he just like talks about how, he told this guy the story about this king from his old country that went into exile. And he thinks that is the,
poem's actually about him.
Yeah. Well, he's saying like the poem's actually about this king. And then he talks more and more about the king. And then he kind of doesn't say it, but he very heavily implies it, that like he is the king in exile. So it's like, actually this poem is all about him. And like, and then it's just like, it kind of goes like deeper and deeper and deeper down. And it's just like how it's a really interesting book on how like we contort narratives to like internalize them and make them about ourselves, and to take that concept of this obscure, not really obscure, but like this like high art, like capital L literature novel, and think, I am going to transpose some of the themes of this book into a $150 million science fiction film, like blew my
Kay's whole story.
Because
this story is not about me.
Yeah, that is Kay's whole story. It's
desperately
just like
wanting it to be, but it's just not.
This is all about me. I am the chosen boy.
Yeah.
And then him slowly realizing that he is not the one, and that is incredible.
Just touched on something for me, because you said it's about a poet. When I was like looking stuff up before this movie, I saw this quote from Hampton Fancher, who wrote the first Blade Runner, and I think he wrote the first draft to 2049.
He's on screen still, so he contributed a bunch.
And he has a quote about how Kay's arc is him, like, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's him going from a handbook to a poem.
Huh. Interesting.
Which is that like, isn't that? Like,
I mean, the book is literally on the table. Like they hold it up.
I didn't know it was about a poet though.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I like thinking about this movie more than I enjoy watching it. Yeah.
Then read about Pale Fire. Don't take time to read
Exactly.
Sparks note.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm good on Pale Fire. Just having you explain to me.
But like that's the thing, right? Like that intellectual depth on a $150 million like. Whoever thought this was a 4-quadrant blockbuster.
I feel like this would have been better as a miniseries. Like, there's a lot of movies.
I do wonder if it didn't get made and it was trying to get made right now. Like, I know there was talks. I don't know if they're still going on to do Blade Runner 2099 for Max, but like, it wouldn't have surprised me if this ended up as like a 9-episode Max limited series. Like, it could have been Westworld. It could have been something like that, but highlighting Kay's story, right?
Yeah.
As one of the many threads that's happening in this. Let's rattle off the rest of them, right? There's Jared Leto's Neander Wallace, who
wants to figure
out how replicants can breed,
so he can mass produce enough slaves
so
to
they can start
producing
themselves.
Yeah. So they can colonize even more stars.
Yeah.
He's the absolute evil in this.
The politics that this movie digs into between gender and fertility and environmental things, and like there's that stuff that's layered on top of everything too. But then you've also got Robin Wright,
just trying to keep the peace.
She wants to avoid a war. Then you've got the replicants who want a war. Like, all of us, 2/3 of the way through this movie, they're like, we have an army and we're gonna run. I'm like, gee, really?
Yeah,
like we're doing that now?
Money James come from?
Exactly. And then Deckard just wants to kind of be left alone. Like, he's not even super interested in meeting his kid, even at the end when he's meeting his kid, and there's all of that happening. It needs 2 hours and 40 minutes.
And also, and this is kind of with the Deckard stuff, it's a sequel. And I think it's a very good as a sequel. It rides that line of being like, you can watch it alone, but it would be better if you saw the first one. Yeah,
it gives you enough context. But then also, those old recordings hit a little different if you're a fan of the original. But it is wild that it's easy to forget that the original Blade Runner was initially a flop.
Right.
Like, it's because Blade Runner is like Mount Rushmore science fiction type of like hallowed ground, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to forget that it started out as a flop. Like, it was bad. And it was. Like, the theatrical version was legit bad. and so, like, for then somebody to green light it and think like, we'll do a big budget version of this movie, and because everybody loves it. And, and it also happened in the thick of Harrison Ford's little, I'm going to make sequels to all of my iconic characters.
In fairness, it is nice to see Harrison Ford actually trying.
Oh, God. Like, okay, so here's the other question.
He's trying.
I was going to say, is he? that hard.
coming back for Han Solo and coming back for Indy,
Sure,
and coming back for Deckard.
Compared to Han, yes.
Well, and compared to Indy too.
Yeah,
Like I don't like he legit cares about this movie. I feel like
he cares about Indy too,
in Blade Runner
though.
2049. He's
trying.
putting in the work. I think.
Yeah, it just happens to go very well with his old grouch. Personality.
I don't know. I thought he was trying. I think like that. I think when they're
love him in it.
I think when they're having the drink and he's pouring the whiskey down for the dog to drink off the floor, and then it's like
that's fun.
And then like the line is like, "The real?" I was like, "You'll have to ask him."
Yeah.
Also, he does not come in until what? I wish I
2
marked-
hours?
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 hours. I
Yeah.
think about because I think it was
When they
my
go to
third
Vegas, yeah.
viewing session that I finally got to Harrison.
Got her name?
Officer KD6-3.
That's not a name. That's a serial number.
Let's talk about some brilliant moments.
Let's start with the intro because
Yeah.
Jamie just showed us earlier that like this was the original intro to Blade Runner.
Right. So the scene where Gosling goes to get to get
expunge
Dave
his first
Bautista,
move. Yeah.
like he's gonna, or I guess I should say, Kay is going to retire Sapper. That was originally going to be the cold open of the first Blade Runner. That similar situation, which honestly would have been cool because one of my gripes with the original Blade Runner is how bad Harrison Ford is at his job. So to like see
He's
him
not very good.
Yeah, to see him do something capably right off the bat, I feel like would have gone a long way. But there are storyboards for it that are floating around, and it's more or less the same deal. Like he walks into this replicant's house, he's waiting on him when the replicant comes back in, and then he retires him and takes, I think it's his jaw that he takes off in the storyboards instead of the eyeball or whatever. But it's more or less the same scene.
No, I do really like this scene too, because I don't want to every single scene talk about the production design and how intentional it all is, but I love it in the Sapper scene because you can just get the idea of how like desperate this little home is, and the boiling pot's very intentional. And is this one of Dave Bautista's like first acting things?
Nah, this would have been well after Guardians.
Oh,
yeah.
this is
Guardians
close.
would
Yeah,
Guardians would have been
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
I do think though this is his first serious thing.
Yeah.
Guardians was obviously the first big thing.
Yeah.
But then when Villeneuve cast him, I remember it being
He was
like,
he was
what?
just he
Drax is gonna be, and then
he's very much like, thank you so much for doing this. Like
yeah.
you know,
Well, but I mean, think about that. Like he's Drax, right? And then Denis Villeneuve puts him in this movie in a role that is right up front. Like the confidence that he had in Dave Bautista to be Sapper in this moment, like this is the cold open of the movie.
Yeah, and it's real acting too.
He's good.
You know, like
Yes.
he's like, I'm an old military medic,
Mhm.
and I tried to give a replicant a C-section, and they died. Like "You've never seen a miracle."
Yeah.
line is
That's a good line.
Yeah,
I like
it's-
that line a lot.
Yeah, I mean, which is honestly like, so it's, you buy him throwing a guy through a wall, and then you also buy him being really sad about the miracle he witnessed 30 years ago.
And also, in a very simple level, sets up replicants as a threat in case you've never seen Blade Runner.
Mhm.
The show's done with super
Well,
strength.
and the newer model too,
And-
for Gosling to be built much smaller, obviously, than pro wrestling's Dave Bautista, and to win that fight pretty handily, is like, it establishes all kinds of stuff.
Because you've never seen a miracle.
I do like, there's several moments in the movie where like and this is what I found, especially in watching movies and taking notes the way that we do for this show. Like I've found that I'm really enjoying picking up on things that I never really noticed before. And it's things
because
like
we have
how,
to have things to talk about here.
Exactly. but movies that remind you, like how they remind you who the characters are, right? And there's a scene later in the movie where he's looking at the DNA charts, and it's like futuristic microfiche, right? It's this really great combination of old
That's
school
very
technology,
noir-y.
but
Yeah,
it's
it's just
very
like-
noir, and yeah. But you have to remember that he's a robot, or a Cylon, or a skin job, or a replicant,
Toaster.
or whatever.
He's a special replicant until he's not.
And he's able to like spot two identical genetic codes like cruising through super fast, and it's just like the type of production design and the choice to they wrote that in, right? Because there's a whole thing is like, can you just tell me if there's any that are the same? And the machine is like, I can't. And he's like, all right, fine, we'll just look at all of them. So they very intentionally put that in there so that we can remember that he's a replicant, which is a very small thing, and it might seem obvious, but it's a
don't
thing.
know that
It's
it
a
is
thing that I
obvious.
get that gets. Well, it might seem the need to do that.
Yeah,
might
that's
seem
what
obvious,
yeah.
right? But like the way to do it in an organic way and in to give yourself little signposts throughout a 2-hour and 40-minute movie, like it's impressive structurally.
I agree. Also, side note, we're just talking about how these things are machines and they can do computing like that, and that yet they still love to drink.
Like
That's the
oil.
noir stuff
Yeah.
that comes in. Yeah, they're still in a film noir. Maybe they're aware of that.
He knows. He's seen a
Mhm.
few detective films.
Jacket like that, he knows.
But like I did keep forgetting throughout the movie that Ryan Gosling is a replicant. Like it just like he acts so human. I really enjoy the especially with the Ana de Armas character. I think more than anything, the whole entire like, should I like, are they empathizing? Are they feeling human? I think it's best exemplarized with Joy. I love the Joy character, and also I think this is really what put Ana de Armas on the map too.
Yeah, this
She
was
had like Knock Knock before.
She did Knock Knock, and then she was in this.
War
and then-
Dogs, I think maybe.
I agree with you on that point too, right? Just because like this is just a theme I always keep on coming back to, right? Where it's like, well, the robots seem to have an emotional attachment to each other, so like, who are we to say it's fake?
But with Joy, I think we're kind of meant to think it may be, because
when he encounters the giant hologram
at
later.
the and by the way, she calls him Joe, and I don't know if this is intentional, but I always think of Joe like with her saying Joe, you think of like prostitutes, and they call
John,
John, yeah. So I almost wonder if it's a reference to that.
Well, I do. I think the fact that she calls the giant hologram that's not Joy calls him Joe is like that's some sort of pre-programmed sort of response, and that's all part of his journey to sort of discover. He's an opposite Pinocchio, right? Like he's just discovering that he's not a real boy.
There's a lot of Pinocchio in this. Like everyone's just trying to be a real boy and girl.
Well, and even Robin Wright has that line. He's like, we're just trying to hold on to something real.
That's what I like about Robin Wright, because like she's just trying to keep the faith.
You want to talk about her real quick?
Love
She's
Robin
incredible. In this movie.
She's so good. I like because she is doing that perfect thing where she could maybe be a villain, but you do get the feeling that like she's just trying to keep it together.
Yeah, she's not the villain.
Almost kind of like House of Cards. Like
she's just like, I mean, Claire Underwood is definitely
she's
what
not
got
good.
her.
Claire Underwood is
Okay, hang on.
Claire Underwood is definitely what got her this role. But
I love her. Every time I never think to say Robin Wright's one of my favorite actresses, but every time I see her in something, I'm just like, God,
she doesn't miss much. Yeah,
she's no, she's so the scene between. I'm jumping way ahead, but the her versus Love scene is
where Love
With
like
the
crushes her hand on the glass,
and her not even flinching.
And there's also like I do think that we are meant. She's not the movie's antagonist, but she is an antagonist for replicants.
Yeah.
Right. Like because she's trying to shut down and Love says it. She articulates it really well when she's like, you're so afraid of change, you're going to shut down some new, miracle, and
she's trying to preserve the power imbalance.
Yes, exactly.
Because they're not equals.
Yeah. And but the other thing is there is a moment, the moment where Robin Wright is in Kay's apartment talking to him, and she's sitting there having a drink, and she makes him tell Kay tells her about the dream, about hiding the horse in the which, by the way, Tayo, great work on the horse.
Excellent touch.
3D printing
it's not a
3D printing
not a
my
Boogie
fake
Nights penis,
my fake
but...
memory. I do want to bring one of these home with me, but I am not bringing that on the plane.
No.
But the scene where they're in the apartment, like she totally wants to bone him, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so there's
Gosling. He's still
well, sure. I mean, there's that.
Yeah.
That's the meta narrative that I was talking about earlier. But as the chief, as his superior, like she's giving real thought to like, what if I get drunk? If I get drunk and we're gonna do this?
Well, I also think she.
I mean, there's replicant prostitutes.
Yeah,
I mean,
but for her,
but no, she cares about him.
She does care about him to a degree. She's also like, I'm not paying to patch up your arm, like right out of the gate. Like, she's not great. She's not great.
No, that's why
she's not she's not the movie's antagonist, but she is supposed to be. She's not good for Kay.
Yeah, no, she's an obstacle.
Yeah,
for sure. This is why I kind of wish this was a miniseries, because I would watch 3 episodes on Josh.
Yeah, but she's not just an obstacle. At the end of the day, she didn't give up Kay.
No.
Oh no. Well, that's why I don't think she's a villain. I think she's like you were saying, she's an antagonist, not a villain.
Giving up Kay though would have been her losing her whole goal of preventing that war though. So like I don't know if it was about Kay or if it was about her motives,
I do think she's like I always think of like varies from Game of Thrones, people who aren't working for any particular interest but the realm.
Yeah,
And
protecting the realm.
I think that's her. I think she's
Yeah.
looking out for the state of the world, for better or worse.
Right. What other scenes did you guys flag?
I call it the world's artsiest threesome.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It's so, and I would almost say it's a lamp bump. In a way.
Well, Villeneuve referred to it as the most complicated sex scene ever filmed.
Oh, hey, I'm not
So
too
you're,
far off.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
He actually did that with an interview with IGN. I found an
Yeah.
old IGN
Yeah.
article where we talked to him about it. But yeah, no, that scene is really good. And
I just couldn't believe my eyes. Like, I think more than any other scene in this movie. And there's so much like visual feastiness to this movie.
Mhm.
But like, I just couldn't believe how it didn't look too jittery to the point where you're like, okay, we get it. They're doing a
Yeah.
robot thing. But it was like this perfect mix of the two actresses
Mhm.
that just broke my brain when I was
well,
rewatching
and
it.
the way that their hairstyles are different, and then
Yeah,
kind of
they're
merged
like eye
together.
shapes, and it
Their
kinda,
eye
like,
shape
comes
changes a little bit.
together.
I do. The way that they did Joy is really cool because I also read that they had like pretty close to the end of production is when they finally landed on the look of Joy, which is a mostly, solid form, and then occasionally, like if a light shines from behind her, like you can see through it or whatever. And they went through like, a hologram, like a more sort of traditional sort of particle-based hologram. And at one point she was going to be like a flat pane of glass. And like it was, they did all kinds of different things. And then they finally landed on like, she's just going to look like a real person that's in the room.
The coolest thing I thought that they did, what they tried out, is they would freeze frame her for 9 frames. So it looked like the computer was processing what Kay was saying before going back into the animation.
Yeah.
And they were just like, that looked too jittery and it didn't read.
Yeah.
But like, to think about it at that level, of just being like, we're actually going to freeze frame this performance for 9 frames because that's what we think a computer processor would be doing to try and process the input for like the reaction.
It's buffering.
That's really cool.
They weirdly shot it mostly practically. Like
Really?
it was all on set. They didn't do any performance capture. No, they weren't with dots on green screen or anything. What they would do is, from what I can understand, what they did was Ana de Armas and Mackenzie Davis would decide which of them would be sort of driving for which part of the thing. And so like if Mackenzie Davis was like, okay, I'm going to be the one that's going to walk around and take the jacket off. And then Joy is going to be tagging along on that movement, right? So then Mackenzie Davis would go in and they would film her side of it first. And then Ana de Armas would watch it, like the camera team, the VFX team, and they would all get with the script soup, and they would time all of the movements, and they would very intentionally not line them up perfectly. Also, so they would shoot Mackenzie Davis walking around taking the thing off. Then they would shoot Ana de Armas walking around taking the thing off and saying at 4 seconds in she puts her arm up here, and at 2 seconds she grabs the coat, and then and so they would pace it just barely not precise. Right. And then they would, and then at that point they would layer them on top with, that's all CG and
that makes
that's
so
computer
much
stuff.
sense, but it's so much simpler than I ever would have thought.
It wasn't. I think it was harder.
No, it's
Yeah.
more difficult.
It's a
I
lot
think
precision.
if they had shot one of them on set and then the other one it would have been the obvious thing to do would have been to shoot Mackenzie Davis on set and then just shoot Ana de Armas with dots on her face and then layer her on top of it all. That feels like it would have been easier than the way that they did it. But the way that they did it, there's a texture to it, and there's a weight to like they're both tangibly
Well,
in the
that
room,
one-
which is the whole point. Like emotionally, that's the whole point for Kay in this scene is like he wants to be able to, like Joy needs to be tactile for him in that moment, And so shooting her practically on location was the only way to do it in that respect.
My question is like, do they have to just like use like motion controlled cameras so like the camera moves are all precise because it's like the background and stuff like that, like nothing gets in the way because it's like very much like rotoscoped on top of it and they're going to cut everybody out because it's like it's a post-production choice who they're fading in of like to your point of like who's in the driver's seat, like who's more opaque in the final cut as opposed to the one that's transparent. And all of that has to take like so much time in post, especially since there's no green screen. So it's not like keying out the background, it's like cutting them out, feathering the edge of like the fingers and stuff like that and the hair.
Well, I think that's what makes it so different than anything I've ever seen in any other movie because you kind of almost expect one to be more opaque. You expect one to be a little more feathered.
Yeah.
But like
They go in and out.
Yeah, they go in and out. And it's not, again, anything I've ever seen like that in any other movie before or since. It's incredible.
No, it's great. And I mean, to have them both be that present.
Mm-hmm.
Giving Joy some agency in that moment is a really cool choice. Like she organized this, right? Like she wants to connect with Kay in a way that she hasn't ever been able to, and this is like a cheat code to do that, I guess. And then Mackenzie Davis, her character is just kind of weirdly along for the ride, I guess, but
she's not. I mean, this is where
she's
he
a
puts
pleasure
the
bot
tracker
or whatever
on him too.
Yeah.
So
she's got her
not
own.
She's a bit of an antagonist herself.
Yeah. Well, she's got her own.
She has her own
game
agenda.
plan.
Yeah. But no, that's why I really like the Joy character, because I do feel like she has agency, and I think we are meant to debate throughout the movie whether or not she actually, if she can love Kay or if she does.
Her last words.
Yeah, and I think she does ultimately. I think that's very clear.
Well, it would make sense if she does. Like if we're also in a world where the replicants are so advanced and they have their own agency and all that, like. She's an AI also. So like, even if there is like a stock model that comes out of the box, like she learns and she's
classic Battlestar Galactica.
Classic.
Right. All the themes and consciousness questions that Battlestar Galactica probed over 4 seasons.
And I think there's like, again, it keeps on like panning out to Joy being advertised as a product. And I think there's even one shot, I'm not sure if it's during the sex scene, but like they pan to an advertisement for Joy, and it literally says everything you want to hear.
Yeah,
like,
right there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that segues really, really nicely into the gender dynamics that are at play in this. So that was the original Blade Runner, not super kind to women.
No, God, no.
I think it's to put it mildly.
Yeah.
And this one's not really either. Like, I mean, and to your point about like Joy is put out there as a commodity, right? And the only other women are
Joshy and Love.
Yeah, they're prostitutes or they're robots or they're or I guess Robin Wright is, she's the only other real woman that we meet. I think in the movie,
real woman,
right?
Yeah,
like
not
human
replicant,
woman. Yeah. So like the nature of here's a housewife for you that will like show like the fact that we meet Joy and she shows up looking like Donna Reed is really telling, and but it's intentional in a way that's like highlighting the problem with it as opposed to being problematic itself, I think.
Well, that's the thing. I'm not like you said, there is a lot of stuff that makes me a little uncomfortable in Blade Runner. Not 2049.
Yeah.
Like I think it is fully aware of what it is doing.
Right. It's like this is, the fact that, because the heart of the story too is about like, and Robin Wright's, what is her? I keep calling her Robin Wright instead of her character.
Joshi.
Or Madame
Joshi's whole deal about maintaining the status quo of like there's the replicants, they work for us, and like she doesn't want that to change at all. Wallace too is like the scene where he's inspecting the new model and he says something along the lines of, "We lost our taste for slaves unless they're engineered," which is such a slimy thing to say, but it's the heart of the movie, right? The movie is about outcasts, secondhand citizens, and the struggle to change that.
Subordinating a class.
Exactly, yeah. So to have a lot of gender politics like that in terms of just, this is what happens, this is what we think of women in the future,
and since we're talking
thematically
about,
super relevant.
And with the whole Wallace thing, I think Love's also a really, really interesting character that also comments on that. I mean, one of my favorite kind of villain tropes is like person who is bad just because they want daddy's love. And I think Love is a version of that in a big way. She just wants to be the best. She has no soul. She has no goal.
She says it right at the end, right?
Yeah.
She
like,
when she beats up Gosling at the end, she's like, "I'm the best one."
Yeah.
The fact that it's
like,
"I'm the best one."
I'm the best one. It's like the most childlike line
exactly.
too. It's like that's what a child would say. But like I found myself, even though she is so menacing, I found myself feeling bad for her.
Yeah.
Because like at the end of the day, she's just a product of her environment.
Right.
And that environment is the most which by the way, how do you guys feel about Wallace like as a villain?
I mean, I think he's
generically evil.
That's why I don't know that I like that he's so over the top evil. It kind of works.
Apparently, we wanted David Bowie to be
I did read
Wallace,
that.
but not
Which I think probably would have been pretty cool.
That would have been pretty. He died like 6 months before that.
Yeah.
Which I think Wallace being he's more representative of the issues that they're talking about than he is a proper villain. I feel like, because I mean here's a guy
He's
that
a tech
literally
CEO.
right.
I mean, like I don't think he's like out of the realm of like believability.
No, but he's a guy that the one frustration that he has and the one motivating factor is that he can't build a womb, which is like, well, I got to recreate that so we can be done with women completely.
Well, I was just about to say that's another big gender politics thing. Yeah. It's like, we don't have the baby machines right now.
Yeah, and the fact that he can augment himself in so many ways. Because, by the way, that is another brilliant moment I want to talk about. His little robots floating in the scene where he's looking at this, the woman coming out of the goo bag. But when his little robots float into the room, that is so creepy.
It's so he's creepy.
He's very creepy.
And I think it's really interesting too, and I don't think this is a subtle thing. The fact that he doesn't really he has like mechanical eyes, and the whole thing is eyes being a window to the soul. And if you like, do they have souls? Will they have eyes? And when they're retired, they take their eyes.
So what you're trying to say is Jared Leto doesn't have a soul?
No, I think that's what it's saying. Like, I think he...
No, I know.
Yeah. Oh, Jared
Leto himself.
Well, do we need to discuss the meta of that, Jared Leto? There was a choice. He went for it.
We could storm Eden and retake her.
Can we talk about Las Vegas yet?
I was just going to say, when are we going to get to Las Vegas?
Let's talk about Las Vegas. That, and in particular, that flying the drone, little scouting flight that they take through Vegas looks incredible. So cool.
There's a lot of very intentional color choices in the cinematography, and I don't like I one thing I started to catch on to is I feel like it gets really yellow when he starts kind of like getting closer to the mystery of like what he's trying to figure out. And it almost reminded me of like how in video games they'll put controversially yellow paint to things you're supposed to follow. So like I don't know if that's anything, but I was like, every time it's yellow, he's kind of onto something.
It's not only that. I mean, like when you look at the production design of Jared Leto's place, like that also has like yellow.
There's a lot of yellow.
It's very, very warm. Like,
and then it's like really orange and warm.
But LA is very humid.
And it could just be that it's warm and it's warm color,
but this is another sequence that's just chock full of miniatures augmented with CGI. But like this, there's something about this floating through Vegas through that looks like a whole different planet. Like it looks like a map from Halo too. Like it looks,
it's all very video gamey to me.
Yeah, it's also very Deakins-y, right? Like it's just like using a lot of like fog and stuff like that to just create depth.
Yeah, well, he did more or less this exact shot a couple years prior to that in Skyfall. Like the end of Skyfall, which the concept of that is like we're running into hell, and so it's just nothing but fog and orange light. Yeah,
the train heist and the killing of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford.
Yeah.
Like loves using.
The dude loves fog so much.
And you know what? I
love
him
nails
for
it.
It looks fucking great.
Yeah. I just that's the thing. Like even during the parts where I was like a little less intrigued, I was like, oh, I'm still in this world, and I think that was part of the point. He's not constantly trying to entertain you, obviously, but like you always feel like you're inside of it.
Well, and also that actually goes back to the miniatures, the miniature work that we did. There's some great behind the scenes featurettes on the miniature work, and they talk about the way that they made the buildings look like weathered and old, and like the detail that they did, like what are they, 1/16th model or something, like whatever the scale is, but like painting little like graffiti that's like this big on the bottom of a building to just give it a little texture.
I think it's cool how they use computers, right? So like they built everything digitally, right? Like got it approved and then more or less like 3D printed apart.
Yeah. It's a lot of cardboard, a lot of 3D printing stuff. It was a lot of,
They build it all, like they design it all on a computer and then they build it once.
Yeah.
And it looks so good.
Yeah.
Like
watching a camera float through that city is
incredible.
It's great.
Like
full stop.
I feel like we say this every episode where it's like we don't want to just say this scene is so pretty, but like you can really pause at any moment in this movie, and that's a print.
You could pause at any moment in Roger Deakins' career and do that. Like that's
what you sign up for when you watch a Roger Deakins movie.
I do think the best still frame in this movie though is not actually in it, which is when Ryan Gosling got really punched in the face by Harrison Ford. That's a testament to like.
You're talking about the one where and it's looking past Ryan Gosling and he's got a grin on his face, having just been punched by Harrison Ford.
And then Harrison Ford looks like he can't
be mad about that.
no one in the history
Oh my
of
God,
like life.
I'm
Yeah.
looking.
Like look at him. Like Harry, like he looks so fucking cool getting
No, but
punched in
Harrison
the
Ford
face
looks
by
so mortified.
Yeah, he, like Harrison Ford is like, oh shit. And like
I feel
he's
like
just,
that's an image too where Ryan
Yeah.
Gosling is making this sound like, oh,
Yeah.
like, you know what he looks like? He looks like Daniel Stern in like
yeah.
in Home Alone, where it just like he just gets punched in the face. And
I don't think I
Yeah,
clocked
he just
that.
got hit with a
That's
bag full of wrenches.
It's like
a phenomenal still.
Like,
Oh my God.
he looks cool as hell getting like actually punched in the
and
face
Harrison
by
just
Harrison
know
Ford.
when he messed up.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
he's just like, whoops. It's a
My
great,
God.
great still. I love it. It's the best frame, in my opinion, like the best frame to come out of this
and
movie.
also
it's
shot
not
by
even-
Roger Deakins.
Yeah,
so
also
it
shot
still
by
looks really
Roger
good.
Deakins.
Yeah, the lights in the back, it's actually beautiful when you look past Ryan Gosling's face.
Everybody's properly exposed. You can see all, like
So glad that was
there's so much of a story being told in
Yeah.
that still.
Incredible.
But we haven't. I actually don't think we've talked that much about Ryan Gosling and how good he is in this. I think he's always been good at playing characters who are supposed to be a little emotionally removed,
Uh-huh.
and this takes this to the most literal extent in a very, very smart way.
But yeah, and doing it in a way too that is like the depth to which Kay feels things in the movie is never lost.
there's
right?
that one scene
And
where
so
he
there-
just screams.
The scene where he goes to Dr. what's her name? The woman who ends up being the child.
Yeah.
And we go into this space and she's like creating memories. And like you walk into this scene and when we first meet her, she's changing the eyes on a fly and she's doing all of this thing. And then she makes a birthday cake and everything, it's all digital and all visually represented. But when it gets to the part of the scene where he shares his memory with her, none of that. It's just actors like feeling things on camera. You know, there's no like when it really matters and when she starts crying, it's just actors performing.
It's grounded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like all of the tools that are at her disposal to like visualize memories, like we don't get them, and she just starts crying, and it's such a beautiful little scene, and again a lot of restraint on $150 million movie that's supposed to make $1 billion. To show that kind of restraint is incredible.
Same with the Harrison Ford scene, right? Like it's just like simple close-ups of them sitting at a bar, just like talking. Like he has to get the shit beaten out of him in order for Harrison Ford to trust him. And then it's just like, let me tell you, like just like classic Harrison Ford grizzled, like, all right, let me tell you about like how we hid everything. I sometimes I can't not see my daughter because I had to hide her.
And in that moment too, Kay is rooting for Deckard to be his dad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's even that great moment where he walks out there like, here's the strangers, you know, it's this.
It's very much it's like dad.
Well, also, and
You my dad?
I am going more to the meta. I feel like they kind of played it up before the movie came out too. I feel like on the press tour they were almost kind of doing the press as like a father and son duo. Like they really wanted you to think. No, but I also love the scene, and I also, again, going a little more meta, the fact that he pops up when he does, I feel like you might start to be like a little like, oh God, okay, this movie's run a little long. And then Harrison Ford pops up and it ramps back up. That's one of my favorite parts of the movie. Like, Harrison Ford, he's here. Now we're cooking with gas. There's a dog. Great, adorable dog. And
Great dog.
yeah, and I really also like the line where I think Ryan Gosling is like,
Is it real? I don't know. Ask him.
I was going to talk about the scene where Sean Young comes back. We're 2 hours 15 into the movie now. We still have a whole act and a half left.
it's a long movie.
But when this is the real part where I started to think about the meta narrative of this entire movie, and like there's a thread that you can pull on with this scene where it's like, oh, and Wallace is like, hey, I brought her back for you. She's a gift to you. And it's Sean Young from the first film, Uncanny Valley, Sean Young. And her eyes were green. Like there's something, and then they just shoot her. So there's something about, like, I like the idea, particularly with all of these sequels, these distant sequels that we're getting and that we got, especially with Harrison Ford, with Star Wars and Indy and this as well. You can't recreate the original one. And so for for them to put a scene in this movie where he's like, hey, I recreated the original. And then she shows up and he's like, nope, it's not right. And then they shoot her. it's just like, yeah, like that's, and in a way it makes an excuse for the 2 hours that led up to this, right? It was just like, this is a different movie. Like, this is a different time and we're doing a different thing. It's the, God forbid, The Last Jedi, let the past die, kill it if you have to kind of energy.
It kind of does have that, though.
I mean, that's exactly what I read it as anyway. Like, that was where my head was at during that scene. But it's another scene. And the set design here. One of the things that I really like about Wallace's building is how the light source is always moving. It's like a sun that's slowly moving across the ceiling or something.
Well, I was trying to think of the symbolic impact of it looking like water, and I couldn't find any good answers for it, but I'm sure it means something.
To me, like, my takeaway for this space is that it is so garish and so wasteful and so, like,
cool.
Well, it's cool looking. It's very cool. But, like, in terms of what it says about his character, like, this is where he spends all his time.
It's Gotti's fun.
Yeah.
Like, this guy, like, basically...
And coming from the streets that we see the rest of the movie.
He's the guy providing all of the slave labor that is colonizing the galaxy. So...
And he's sitting in a pyramid.
Yeah.
Makes lots of sense.
Which, when you see the guy do the thing in those, like, featurettes, it's like, a human being is this tall.
Oh, yeah. He's talking about the scale of the models, and when he built Wallace's tower, like, there's another woman in that featurette that called it, these are actually bigatures, not miniatures, because they're huge.
Yeah, but
he's like,
huge.
the scale that we're working on with this, like, the people would be, and he had these, like, calipers or whatever
that were just like, you could
barely put
see
it. He's like, this is how big a person would be. And it's like, that's where he's at. That's where his head's at. And sitting up there, I'm sure it's at the very top of that building. They look that big.
It's the penthouse, yeah. But that's why I think this is such a good sequel. Because it's one of those, like we were saying, where you don't have to see Blade Runner, but you're going to enjoy it a lot more if you do.
I love this movie. I think it's great. It sets up so much. It does so much. I do think that the final fight has so much on its shoulders that it is kind of underwhelming.
Oh, very much
that's so funny because I loved it.
You're talking about Kay and Love in the water.
In the water. Like, it's just like a black abyss of water.
And I feel like he's barely trying to keep his head up. Like, he's like very lazily just like gasping for breath.
It's always leading to that fight. It was always leading to that fight. And there's nothing wrong with that fight. It just seems like that fight just is too simple for everything at play. And I think like, the same thing kind of seems true in the end of Dune too, right? Like, Dune 1 ends with the fight for not Stilgar, Jamis, right? Same exact thing. Two people, just like one-on-one combat, like fighting it out, and it's just, I don't know, everything at stake on this. At this, it's just like, I know that, like, love has to be vanquished. Something about this fight scene just doesn't have the gravitas that the rest of the movie has to me.
I think the reason it kind of did it for me maybe was just because this movie is surprisingly not action heavy.
Yeah.
And this is really only one of the major action scenes in the entire movie.
I mean, neither was the first one.
Yeah.
The first one had one or two little chase scenes, and that's about it.
Yeah, but at least, but Deckard and Batty on the rooftop.
That was cool.
Yeah. And I feel like if you don't know Blade Runner, you might mistake it for an action movie series, but it absolutely is not.
I mean, I'm sure the trailer was all explosions and punches and literally Ryan Gosling running through a wall. I remember that was in the trailer.
Oh, yeah. That, like, surprised me this time. No, but I just like how vibey it is with the water and the light.
It's just so simple compared to the rest of the...
But I like how simple it is.
It's like there's just so much other production design in here. It's just like, all right, everything's going to be black. We're going to show you a little bit of the car, like, trapped on the beach, and, like, two people are duking it out as we just, like, spray it with
and not
with a
particularly
fire hose.
Skillfully either. There's it doesn't build off of anything. Like, their relationship, Kay and Love's relationship, is kind of at stake, especially, like we mentioned earlier, her, like, I'm the best one. Like, they've got something to prove there, or she does anyway.
It feels very desperate. I think that's why I like it, on Love's part. And we haven't said Sylvia Hooks, who plays Love. She's phenomenal.
She's very good.
But it just seems like this desperate child fighting for relevance.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, like, kind of, her performance in this scene is, I think, maybe what affected me. Like, she's just desperate. And again, I felt bad for her.
And just, I guess Kay in this moment is fighting for a kid to be able to meet her dad, because he's not going to be able to get that. but like his memory, and that's, the question, and it's the tears in the rain thing, right? Like, it's just, why do my experiences need to be less valuable than anything else? And like the fact that Kay had her memories his whole life.
She implanted her memories.
Yeah. And so it's like, what does that do for, are you just who you are, full stop? Or are you who you're made to be, and it's good. It's good.
I will say, because you brought it up, and we decided the Blade Runner episode probably.
We're kind of knocking them both out.
But as much as I think I've convinced myself that 2049 is the better movie, the better Blade Runner, it doesn't have a Tears in the Rain monologue.
It does not have a Tears in the Rain monologue, but it does have a Tears in the Rain scene. I do fundamentally think at the end where like Gosling is like, Kay is laying on the stairs and the snow is coming down. I do think that like the whole concept of a snowflake, that they're supposed to be special and that he's not, and he's just laying
there.
Like he's just a snowflake in the storm kind of thing.
It's the Tears in the Rain song. Like the music cue is I think the same one from Batty's speech.
It's definitely meant to evoke that.
Yeah, and also I think make it clear that Kay is dying.
Mm-hmm.
The swapping the rain out for snow was particularly for the journey that Kay was
very French Canadian thing to do.
Exceptionally French Canadian.
I really appreciate his whole arc, Kay's. I mean, it really is a subversion of the hero narrative, which is always the chosen one, the pale fire. Right? Yeah, it's back to that. It's you thought you were special and you're not, but what he ends up doing is really special and heroic. He ends up becoming someone special. And I think that's nice.
It's all any of us can ask for.
We
didn't talk about the trash mason, how San Diego is just the dump for LA now.
Also, those sets look
those
great
sets
too.
were that was another model.
I didn't
situation.
like how believable that was. I'm like, yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Yes, they better keep their real estate prices up with ours. Oh,
we're just gonna start dumping our trash.
Well, we have to put it somewhere.
Yeah.
Not Vegas, apparently.
We're keeping Vegas.
That scene with the guy running the orphanage who's trying to sell kids, like that guy, I thought gave an incredible performance.
Yeah.
He was so scared the whole time.
That's we haven't talked about the whole the horse reveal and the whole. It comes, I think, right at the halfway point where he thinks he's the child.
Yeah. We learn about it in a flashback. Like he starts, there's a little montage of Sapper's line and of the doctor's line and all, like he puts it together, and Villeneuve puts it together for us with flashing back to all of those little things.
I can't believe this whole kid faction is in this movie. Again, a lot of stuff going on.
So much stuff goes on.
It's doing a lot.
Yeah.
Successfully, I might add.
We've talked a lot about how much we like this movie.
Yes, we've also talked a lot about how this, even though it's shouldering a lot, better than the first Blade Runner.
Sure, fine.
Yeah. I think I like it better. Yeah.
I've been going back and forth on it all week as I've been struggling a bit through 2049. I think 2049 is better.
I think so.
Yeah. So we're in agreement here.
Yeah, I think
I don't know that Blade Runner quite like the things that Blade Runner did for like the language of the visual language of cinema are undeniable. Narratively speaking, not so much.
Yeah.
Like
the characterization's really good.
We got a great Tears in the Rain monologue.
It says something when I think one of the things when we're talking about narratively speaking, the fact that Ridley Scott and Harrison Ford disagree on if Deckard was a replicant or not.
Really?
Oh yeah. Well, up until now,
yeah,
they make 2049, and we kind of set it in stone. But like for years and years, they disagreed on if Deckard was a replicant.
That's interesting.
Let's talk about movie list.
I'm curious.
2049, not a one.
Not well. It's kind of not that old.
It's pretty new. That's part of it. We did a lot of stuff about the original when 2049 came out. So we did a What's the Difference? We did an 8-bit. We did Things You Didn't Know. All that good stuff. But 2049's not
sci-fi sequels.
Sci-fi sequels, yeah. Sequels in general.
Sequels that live up to the original.
It's Hot Shots Part 2,
Godfather,
T2,
yeah. Sequels that live up to the original. Yeah, that's good.
Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Sure. Top Gun Maverick.
Spy Kids 2.
Spy Kids
Spider-Man
also.
2.
Yeah, the list writes itself. I'm glad we were done. I'm glad we were recording this. I guess I wasn't writing any of that down. Yeah.
I think there's enough to do a movie about AI
Mm-hmm.
list. Like, there's a lot at this point.
Oh, we did that.
Did we?
No, that was for IGN.
There's been a few.
AI week.
Yeah.
No, I think you could do AI. I did a whole thing about a history of AI in cinema, like going back to Metropolis and all the way up through present, which at the time was like 2017 or something like that. Probably just in time for this movie to come out.
I'm sure do we not have a dystopias list? That feels like an obvious one.
No, we've talked about that. I feel like we've talked about that on this show, like recommending doing a dystopian one. I feel
Maybe
like I have
T2 or something.
I have a
No,
spreadsheet
not
somewhere
dystopian.
with the beginnings of a dystopian.
There's a lot of dystopias out there, man.
Utopia.
How many
There's
topias?
not. I feel like there's not nearly as many utopia movies.
I think every utopia is a dystopia to
is
something.
actually
Yeah.
a dystopian
Mhm.
story. Yeah.
I have one final grenade to throw. It's about Denis Villeneuve.
Mm-hmm.
I am a big fan of this guy. I think his films are excellent. Almost all of them, from The Dunes to Blade Runner to Arrival to Sicario, Prisoners. Everything this guy touches is just
Even Enemy is
Enemy is
weirdly
excellent.
great.
It's just like it's very highbrow mainstream filmmaking, and it leads me to ask the question: is Denis Villeneuve the real Chris Nolan?
No,
Because
no.
I think Christopher
they're doing
Nolan.
different things.
I do not-
okay?
I do
Are
not
you
think
asking
I
that
do-
question, or
I
are
do
you
not-
just
No, I'm asking.
levying
I'm
that
asking
accusation?
No,
that
he said he was
question.
throwing a grenade, and
Yeah.
I'm reacting to
And-
the
Yeah,
grenade
yeah,
being
yeah.
thrown. No, and I don't think Nolan's trying to be Villeneuve either. I think Nolan's trying to
Oh,
entertain more than Villeneuve does.
No, I think
and he
Nolan's.
does.
I think Nolan's trying to be an intellectual
I don't
kind of
think he
big
is.
budget filmmaker.
No, he'll tell you what the movie's about in the movie, and that's what everyone hates about him. But I don't think he's as pretentious as people think he is.
I don't know that. I don't know that it's pretension. For me, it's just like it's an exposition issue. It drives me nuts that
He will tell you what the movie's about.
yeah, for like 3/4 of the runtime.
Yeah, I don't mind it.
That's what like it's Inception. I'm just like, I gotta stop listening to you talk about dreams.
Inception
man.
is like
Tenet.
the perfect example.
Tenet is the same
Tenet is
way.
bad.
Tenet's real
Oh,
bad.
no, I love Nolan. Tenet
Um,
sucks.
Like,
yeah.
Like he just tries to do
You
these
and
hi-
the
he
Peloton
just-
instructors.
Yeah,
is
no, we're
never
right.
gonna
Me
get
and
that-
Peloton, yeah.
Listen, I'm not here to say that like Christopher Nolan's a bad director. There's many of his films that I do enjoy, but I do think that his misses in my book, which include Interstellar. I despise that movie.
I don't like Interstellar. I like
Right? Tenet is also awful.
I saw Interstellar on a very big screen, and it was very loud, and I was like the only one in the theater, and I actually had a blast.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Dude, when
I couldn't tell you what the movie's about.
when
but
they thought out Matt Damon and like I realized that was Matt Damon. Some other guy in the theater also had the same idea I had, which was just to think about Team America, and this guy just yells out in the theater, Matt Damon.
That's why we enjoy the theatrical
I
experience.
fucking lost it.
Yeah.
And it took me out of the whole movie in the best way possible. I was dying. Now, it is not to say that Christopher Nolan hasn't made great movies, right? I do think that like movies like The Prestige are probably some of his like most narratively sophisticated works, right?
well, Memento is too. Like,
Mhm.
and that's why like
Memento's
I like those movies way better than I like any of his other stuff. Honestly,
But like I think like pound for pound, like movie for movie, just like Villeneuve is just operating at another level. And to make the point I'm ultimately trying to say is that like I think neither of these guys are the modern Kubrick.
I'll say this: I think that Nolan is closer, but in a negative way. I
know
think
what you're
I think
saying,
Christopher
yeah.
Nolan and Stanley Kubrick are both like they're so clinical, right? Like they keep you at an arm's, and this is what I was talking. This is the difference between like the insert of the hand and the big Douglas Trumbull shot, right? Like I think Villeneuve he's got more heart to his stuff. He's more in touch with human emotion, I think, than either Christopher Nolan's films.
I raise you
or
Dunkirk, but okay.
Dunkirk. I enjoy.
What about
but
Paths of Glory?
yeah, I mean, listen, there are highlights and there are exceptions that prove every rule and everything, but I think on the whole, like their filmmaking is very arm's length, right? In a way that Villeneuve is not quite the same.
I don't think any of them are trying to be the other. Well, maybe they're trying
I don't
to
know
be
that
Kubrick
they're
a little bit.
whether or not they're
Yeah.
trying to be the other one
Yeah.
is like that. Who knows? Like
I
don't
think
know.
they're
But I
comparable, yeah.
I do think they're doing the exact same thing in terms of like I want to make heady, big budget mainstream stuff.
Sure, and I think you could compare them in that sense that they are
Yeah.
blockbuster filmmakers.
I think
doing
they're the
unique things.
only two doing.
They're doing like the non-MCU thing of blockbusters, which I
Yeah.
think we need. right now. But I don't think I don't outside of that, I don't think they're that similar.
I mean, they're trying to like they're making the biggest budget.
They're making arty blockbusters, sure. Yeah.
Arty blockbusters in a way that's different than like blockbusters in even the 90s, right? Because I don't think that there was like anybody trying to do like the Kubrick level blockbuster in the 90s. Because I think there was just
like Titanic doesn't count.
Yeah, like Titanic,
you know, like
Bad Boys doesn't count. You know, like The Rock and all the there was room in the 90s where you could do like bombastic stuff and not have it be like IP films and things like that. And now we have gotten to this time where every tentpole is like a comic book movie, YA novel, like something to that effect. And there's just like 4, maybe 5 of these guys that get to make like $100 million plus things that aren't pre-established IP.
Well, and Dune and Blade Runner very much were.
Yeah.
So,
but Arrival wasn't. No.
Sicario
wasn't.
They weren't big.
They weren't as big.
They weren't as big budget.
But it's why, even though I don't love all of Villeneuve's movies personally, it's why I'm grateful he's there. Like, I'm glad someone's doing it and someone's allowed to do it and someone keeps getting away with it.
What am I to you?
Let's tour.
I think we did burn through a couple. The punching one was on the list.
Oh, good.
But we still have a couple. True or false? The working title for the film was Blade Runner: Time to Live.
False.
Yeah, I'm going to go false. The one bit of truth might be Time to Live might have been like the secret title that they put on the slates for...
to make so people weren't looky-looing on the Blade Runner sequel.
It's true, actually.
Oh, boo.
Hell,
yeah,
what an ugly
I know.
name.
What a terrible name.
Yeah, it's a little too...
Glad they changed it.
Yeah. No, the film's official title wasn't finalized until months into production. Producer Cynthia Yorkin came up with the title Blade Runner: Time to Live, so sorry, Cynthia. A play on words that is a callback to Roy Batty's Time to Die line in the original.
That's the line they want to call back to?
Tears in the Rain wasn't available. Sony apparently loved the title, but ultimately shifted to Blade Runner 2049 when it was decided the sequel would be set 30 years after the original.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which, good call.
Yeah. No,
There's something about the
much
years.
better title.
Yeah.
Just the way they use numbers and stuff, it seems like way more sterile, like clinical.
Yeah, it's a serial number.
Like a model number, yeah.
And like I feel like it would have felt pretty disingenuous to like tell you what the movie's about in the title because you're kind of supposed to figure it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Just say the title.
Yeah. This is what our movie's about. All right. True or false? Production was halted so that it didn't clash with the La La Land press tour.
False. Was La La Land before or after this movie?
No, it would have been before it.
Was it?
Yeah, because his next movie was the where he played Neil Armstrong.
Oh, which was Chazelle's next movie. Yeah. Okay. True.
It is true.
Very polite of them to do that.
I know. I mean, he's
were they
right.
both?
Gosling
Were they
is not
both
like a
Warner
nobody.
Brothers? Yeah.
He had to be offset by Thanksgiving because of a commitment in New York to complete press for La La Land. The production ultimately got Gosling offset by November 22nd, so he could spend time in LA with his family before the press tour. Aww. That is very nice of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had $150 million that they were going to totally make back.
They were like, we're not going to make money anyway. What's a couple extra weeks?
Once our money printer is done, it'll be fine.
All right, true or false? Sean Young scenes were a last-minute addition suggested by Harrison Ford. In the original script, Sean Young appeared only in flashbacks. I'll even give you a hint. I'll say the true or false part that is that they were last minute.
True or false part is that they're last minute. Then that was probably false.
Yeah, no, I think it's false because I think that the way that they staged because we didn't see video of the flashbacks, like we just heard her talking. No, we did get some flashbacks. That was in the same scene. I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna go false. I think they plan to do it this way all the time.
Did you also say false?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's false. They were kept secret during production. The filmmakers went through great lengths to ensure that the secret did not get leaked. This meant denying the appearance of her character in any scenes and taking extra precautions on set when filming her scenes. So yeah, we all know.
Did they cast I assume they cast a double. And then they...
Right. Torf number 4.
Here we go.
Development began in 1999. True or false?
Yes, true. They've been trying to develop this movie for a long ass time.
I think it was even earlier than that, though. So I'm going to go false.
It's true. Yeah. Long-ass development cycle.
Got it.
17 years after it came out, word of a sequel started to circulate.
Yeah, 99, what? 9 years after that
9 years after the good version snuck out.
Yeah, 9 years after the good version accidentally played in a theater. It's like, oh shit, we might have some here.
Yeah. No. A long-ass development cycle. Hollywood, baby. All right, last Dorf. Originally, the producers wanted The Rock to play Sapper. However, he had to drop out due to conflicts with the production of Furious 7. Consequently, Villeneuve chose his first choice, Dave Bautista. True or false?
I'm gonna go with true on that.
Yeah, I could see the
That
producers
seems like-
wanting
yeah.
The Rock
Yeah.
to be in it. But I'm gonna go false. I think it was Batista all along.
It's false on multiple counts.
Hey,
I mean, Tayo just lying. The Rock was never considered.
right?
And Villeneuve originally thought Dave Bautista was too young for the role. However, after seeing his screen test, he changed his mind.
You can't gray some hair, Villeneuve. Come on.
Yeah, I
man.
mean,
You're
come
like
on, you,
everything
like-
else you did in this movie.
Yeah.
You can't frost some tips.
Also, I don't think he was that young. Like, I don't know.
He looked
He-
appropriately
Yeah.
grizzled. I
aged,
think he
yeah.
was perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, but The Rock was just something Tayo made up. So
Who's your MVP?
Deacons.
Yeah,
Deacons.
Mhm.
Deacons.
Yeah,
Yeah,
across the board,
unanimous.
Deacons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every frame.
Like Villeneuve, you did good, but
This
Deacons
is-
really
And that's
crushed it.
the legacy of Blade Runner is what it looks like, right? Yeah, and Deakins, like he did what the original Blade Runner did, and then he did more.
And ultimately, I have criticisms for Villeneuve. I have no notes for Deacons.
Zero
So
notes. You nailed it.
You did it, dude. You really did.
And this is not a movie either where I feel like everybody is really pulling in the same direction. Those sort of like the awards that default to the director when it's like, oh, everybody did great.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I think Deakins was like
He really-
above and
like,
beyond.
I genuinely think this might be the most gorgeous movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, I can't think of a good competitor.
All of his movies are tied
Yeah.
for first.
Deacons, yeah.
Well, we got time for one more, I think.
Who's Nicolas Cage playing?
Yeah.
I think we get Leto out of there.
Yes, that was mine. Yep.
That's the easy one.
Mm-hmm. Wow. We're a lot of.
We're just, I mean, as
cruising through
much
these.
as we disagreed about the Nolan thing, we're really on the same page
Yeah. when it comes to
about
just
Roger
this
Deakins
movie,
and Nicolas
yeah.
Cage.
I'm not mad at Leto that he's there. I don't
No,
know if he's
I-
crushing it either, like
I
Deacons did.
I think not anybody, but I think there are a lot of people that could have
Yeah.
done what Leto did in this movie.
And I can't say that for Gosling. I can't say that for Harrison Ford.
I don't wanna
I
put-
don't
I
even
don't wanna
think I
get
can say for
Gosling out of there.
Ana de Armas.
No, all of them did great. Leto.
Leto, he could be replaced.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And particularly Nicolas Cage's energy in that
Yeah.
role.
Yeah, he would do great over the top villain. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you two people that didn't have it on their list altogether.
Dan.
I'm sorry, Dan did have it on his list. I didn't have it on mine. Dan has it at 45. So I'm
Pretty
told.
high.
Pretty close. I'm at 41.
41.
Yeah.
You're in the Dan neighborhood.
You're
Starting
in-
season 3 off in the Dan
How
neighborhood.
does that feel?
This movie rules. It is so good. I don't know. I love it. I'll tell you right now. I don't have the original Blade Runner on my list. This is the only one.
I have the original on my list somewhere, but I'm pretty sure I put it on there as some type of obligation as a YouTube film guy for as long as I've been a YouTube film guy.
Like,
I'm
I
just
should
like, no,
have
I'm
it,
supposed
yeah.
to love Blade Runner, so here it is. I don't remember the last time I watched it. And that's the other fun thing about doing this show is like I really shot from the hip.
That's what I did too.
making my
Because
list.
I know
and
Cal,
so
you
like
really considered it.
it's
but, like,
really it's really fun. I considered like the top 20, I think,
Yeah.
mostly, and then the rest are kind of like, I'm
Like,
just like,
it's-
yeah, I love that
It's
movie,
my
or yeah, no, that
87th
movie.
favorite movie.
Yeah, I'm
Ratatouille,
supposed to
sure.
love that
There's
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
one movie we've done so far that I think genuinely deserves to be on my list, which is Seven Samurai. That's the
Oh,
only
the
like
only
that
one you
wasn't
left
on your
off.
list.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the only one that like I've left off.
Yeah.
Not Monty Python, because we all felt pretty bad about that.
I do feel pretty bad about that, but I will say this. After I draft 3 of my list, I went through and I was like, this is too f***ing dour. I deliberately went back and added some comedies.
Made some fun.
Yeah.
Did you have it on
No,
Blade Runner
and
2049?
I'm actually not. Like, as much as we've talked about how good it is and how much I respect it, neither this nor the original Blade Runner is like a seminal Alex Steadman
You don't
text.
think about either of them
I don't really
much.
again, I'm glad they exist. I respect them. They're not on my list.
Before we find out where Blade Runner 2049 ranks, let's go over the new mechanic for season 3, our Alone Against the World season. Any one of us can kick a movie off the list. All it takes is one person
Wait,
to
that's
decide
savage. Oh, we're gonna.
to kick a movie off the list, but they are not involved in the conversation about which envelope movie goes on the list in its place.
That's chaotic.
So you can kick Blade Runner 2049 off all by yourself,
That feels really mean.
But the other two get to...
Give me a couple episodes. I'll kick some.
Oh, yeah, we'll find it.
No,
Yeah, I'll find something
Yeah,
to kick
like
off.
you're
Don't worry.
number 3 or something, and you're like, no, screw you, off the list. Like,
Yeah.
that's a woo.
But, yeah, so that's how it works. One of us can kick a movie off without the other two. It doesn't need to be unanimous like it was with the Community season, but the other two get to pick the replacement. So
we're not kicking it. It stays. It survives. You gonna do it?
No, I don't. I think again. I respect it.
I'm not gonna
it.
kick my own movie.
you're
off
not
the
going to kick
list
your own
yet.
movie off?
I do want to guess where it is, though.
Oh, yeah.
Two
So
40s?
41 for Cal, 45 for Dan, and then 2 no-shows.
I'm gonna go 65.
I'm gonna go 55.
Are we doing Price is Right rules?
Yeah. Well, highest without going over.
You've both lost.
Damn.
48.
48.
Yeah. Okay.
So showing up on 2 lists in the 40s gets you Blade Runner 24. I really wish it would have ended up at 49. And then we could have just put
Oh,
the
it's
little
so
little circle around
close.
49.
That would have been
Honestly,
fun.
That makes me upset. Actually,
I feel like that's the kind of thing that, like, when you look at the
I'm gonna strike it
results,
now.
you could juice those numbers. Dan,
Yeah.
that's another missed opportunity. Do we want it to remain number 48 on our list?
Okay,
Do we
pardon-
want
part of me does want to strike it just to be an asshole.
to?
Like now that we've done all this,
entirely
like,
up to you.
no, I respect it.
Listen, I do
I'm
think
fine with it being on the list.
I don't at all mind at least one Blade Runner being on this list. So I'm not going to
Are
strike
you
it.
gonna kick your own
No,
movie?
I'm
Cal?
no, of course I'm not going to kick my own
You-
movie. Unlike you
It's
guys,
like, I had it 41, but I think maybe
Yeah.
just not at all.
Yeah,
I'm going to make it 39 now, so it could just
man, that's
No,
gonna
you need
get
to knock it
personal.
down.
knock
a
it
few
down.
pegs,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it'll end
I'll
up
put
at
it. I'll
49.
put it on 43. Get
Right.
it down a
Yeah.
number.
Great.
It does bother me that it's 48.
Okay, so congratulations, Blade Runner 2049. You've made the cut again. You get to stay, which I don't mind at all. I
No,
think that's,
I don't mind it.
I think having this some Blade Runner on the list, because it doesn't seem like the other one is going to be on there.
I mean, it's not on my list.
it's not on yours.
No,
Okay, unless I don't know that I had it high enough to do it all by my
it
lonesome.
doesn't.
So
Well, I'm trying to.
it
think
does
of-
feel like a Dan-ass movie.
It does feel like a Dan-ass movie.
We'll see.
Wait, that could be a Dan-ass movie.
The bad news is we've already done the episode.
I
if we
know.
end up having to do it again. So
That one might be a shorter entry if we do have it.
all right. Well, that is going to do it for us this week. It's good to be back for season 3.
Yeah.
We got some new fun games to play, and I bet one of us is going to really stick it to somebody
I
else
can't
at
wait.
some point.
I'm
Yeah.
going to make a point.
It's
It's
yeah,
gonna
it's
get-
when we go
it's
back
gonna
to
get
shooting
gnarly.
remote and I'm not
Yeah.
here. You're really
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
get it to me. Yeah. But so it is good to be back for season 3. Thank you for coming back and watching and or listening wherever you're doing that. To the Outsiders season, Alone Against the World.
Oh, I thought our next movie was the
Yeah.
Outsiders.
That would be. I mean, where
But that
else
would be
would it go?
Well, that would be more of a community movie.
It would. It really would be, ironically enough. But thank you to Tayo Oyekan for replicating us every week for the show. Thanks to technical producer Marhyan Franzen for letting us out of those gooey pouches so that we can record these. And, of course, Jamie Parslow, thank you for setting up all these cameras and lights like 6 months ago. I haven't seen him since. Have you guys? He's not been around much. And, new season, but nothing changes for Dan.
Still sucks.
Still useless as ever. Anyway, in the meantime, stay safe, be good. We'll see you then.